Mwenzi, you were at a meeting earlier today for the Editors Forum, and the ambassador to Kenya from China, that is Wu Peng, made a statement in terms of what they are now doing with their Chinese nationals who are checking into Kenya, because as much as the Kenya Airways suspended its flights from China into Nairobi, the China Southern still flies in, and we'll also talk about the other entry points for possible Chinese. And this is not in any way to be racist, but there is a concern of those who are coming in from China and what controls are there. This is what he had to say.
Such kind of rumors about Chinese military to kill those patients who got the coronavirus is totally, I think, is above my common consensus.
All right, and something else he did say, and this is actually what I really wanted to bring out, is that they will have a new method or process to follow. Chinese nationals, this was actually captured by Angela Okech and Asibo Kabale, who say in this particular article, new directive for Chinese travelers entering Kenya. This was said at the same function, and the Chinese nationals are required to self-isolate themselves for a period of no less than 15 days as part of a fight against the new coronavirus. And this is said by Mr. Wu Peng, Ambassador Wu Peng. From a medical perspective, does this inspire confidence? What is self-isolation?
Yes, I mean, there are different levels of putting people or containing people who are in different levels of infection. You can be isolated, say if you are already suspected to be infected at that point, and say you're in hospital, we can put you in a room where you're alone and we attend to you. You can be quarantined if you are exposed. So like the people say who have been to Wuhan or Hubei and we think they have been exposed to the virus. Self-isolation is, say today I suspect Mwenzi has measles and I know I'm not immune to measles. I go back home. I have been exposed. I'm not sick, I'm not showing any symptoms, but I want to protect my loved ones, I want to protect the people I'm living with. I can choose to live in my bedroom, of course, with little interaction with everyone else in the house, not going to work. If I'm a teacher like myself, I don't want to expose my students. So you are minimizing your interaction with people, so that if you are sick, it's not like you are sick, you confirm to be sick. At this point, you're not confirmed to be sick. You just suspect that because I was exposed, I might be. So instead of taking the risk, you minimize your interaction with others. If you're using utensils in the house, you have your own set, keep washing your hands. You can even wear a mask to protect others. The others don't need to wear the mask because that doesn't really help them. But you are taking the risk, taking the measures to reduce the risk to others just in case you are sick. But if you are sick, that's not self-isolation. You don't need self-isolation. You need a proper isolation in a facility where you can be attended to, because you actually might need the hospital. So self-isolation is for those people who may have been exposed for one reason or another and are not showing any symptoms. So they are low risk, likely to be infected, but because of caution, what the law has liked to call abundance of caution, to protect others, they take those measures.
And does this inspire confidence from a medical perspective on our protection?
For me, it does, but the question is, does it happen? So is Mark today able to tell the boss that from the studio yesterday, I think I've been exposed to this bug, I cannot come to work?
We've had a cough for the last 1 week and still coming to work.
It may have challenges in practice, but if for somebody who really cares about the people around you, it shouldn't be too difficult. Of course, it's hard, but it shouldn't be impossible.
Sure.
I feel that the Chinese ambassador did what he could, because again, he's an ambassador in another sovereign territory, so he can only give certain directives to Chinese nationals coming in. He's not in a position to enforce them. He's just suggesting, like, if you feel you might have been exposed, like what Dr. has just explained, what self-isolation is. Now, this is where the Kenyan government comes in. What is the screening procedure like at the airport? Because again, just because someone is not showing immediate symptoms doesn't mean that they're okay. Yes. So we need that show of confidence, even though, because the reason why misinformation thrives, it thrives in an atmosphere of silence and a lack of information.
Yes.
So if we were to see, even though it was footage of what the screening process is like, because I've had colleagues coming in from outside, and literally all they were asked is to show their yellow fever cards. And you come...
This is recently.
Quite recently. And I cannot fault the Chinese ambassador. He does not have the power to enforce certain things. That is on the government. And I think it is our responsibility as journalists to call power to account and ask, fine, they're being asked to self-isolate. Is that enough? What more can you do to protect us? And I feel that information is currently lacking. And I really hope that maybe someone is watching this show and they'll be like, listen, we're dropping the ball. Let's pick it back up and provide the information people require.
If you can add to what Dr. Hari has said, we're speaking of self-isolation. And you know, most of the people who've not, for example, like us, health reporters, we have the privilege of having doctors, you know, we interact with doctors to explain to us. There are people, laymen, they read that statement, self-isolation, especially in an African state. I remember the first African country to put that on the tweet was Nigeria. They're like, they're self-isolating everyone. They're like, what? An African to self-isolate? Does that even really work? And that's, you know, most populous African country, you know. So how can I self-isolate from my family? So you see, if you have that flow of information, and we also had the same question with the flight, the first suspected COVID-19 case in Kenya, and everyone was like, what about those other people in the KQ887? What happened to them? Are they really following up? The government was like, yes, we are following up and all that, but then they're not explaining to us what steps they're taking to ensure that these people actually they're self-isolating themselves from the rest of the people. Then another thing is about that the screening doors. We've not seen any of them. And remember when we had the Ebola, outbreak outside our borders, I remember the Minister of Health was so active to a point that they called the journalists and told them, let us go to the airport. And we actually saw those machines. Okay. Whether they're working or not, that's a story of another day. But we actually saw the screening devices there. But for this one, we don't even know. We had a ship that docked at the seaport with around 600 passengers. We are told, Marco Polo, right? We are told that they've been screened. We've not seen these things. And you know, for us to reassure our audience or to reassure our readers, actually they trust us with the information. So if you're not getting this information, not even seeing what we are reporting, it's just like government has a two-tier system of screening these patients. This two-tier system, I've not seen it.
You media, someone watching will say, "Nyi mmekaa hapo kwa studio yenu mnangoja muitwe."
Muitwe, exactly. So am I going
but
to be
is that the case? Or unangoja uitwe?
Like I need to rebut.
But you're not holding brief again.
Just to put things in perspective, I like showing the other side of the coin. If you are speaking what I'm saying, I'll probably now be saying the same thing you are. But the interventions you take need to be commensurate with the risk.
Okay.
I don't know how many people traveling from China come into Kenya every day. I don't know.
Daily flights.
But if you look at, I'm sure they are not more than 10,000. If you look at the risk, the number of people infected in China is about 60,000 amongst 1.3 billion. That translates to about 1 in 26,000.
Yes.
So that's a very small risk, practically. If you look at the deaths that people are worried about, out of the 60,000 who've been infected, it's about 2% who have died. Previously, SARS was killing a much bigger proportion. MERS-CoV, which was in 2012 transmitted from camels in the Middle East, was killing much higher, actually, about a third. So if you look at the risk, the interventions need to be commensurate. You don't, as we say, respond to a mosquito bite with a hammer. And that is why you see the measures being taken are measured. It's not, you could say self-isolation with reporting, and the reporting could be initiated by, say, contact tracing. Like, for example, if people come in and you suspect they've been exposed, you have no reason, they're low risk, no reason to say they're sick. You could actually keep tabs on them, get their contacts, and call them on a daily basis, see if they develop any symptoms. I don't know if the government is doing that, but that could be done when the risk reaches that level. So we should also watch out. Remember in 2014 when there was Ebola outbreak in West Africa, there were Kenyans in Asia who were stigmatized. Yes, because you can imagine coming from Kenya, the outbreak is I don't know how many thousands of kilometers in West Africa. And the same thing, I mean, China is huge. So there are people who have not come into contact with anyone with coronavirus. And we are condemning them en masse. So let's avoid that stigmatization without assessing the risk. And that's why you see some of the measures being taken may be appearing weak or under strict, but it could be because of the risk.
But you see, Dr. we don't even know whether the measures are weak, non-existent, if they exist, because we don't know what kind of measures are being taken. And that is the problem I personally have, because it would be really good, even though it's light measures, even though I'm given a light dusting of spray as I enter, it would be really nice for us to know what's happening. That's just like a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical, but basically, we can't, you're asking that, that the response be commensurate with the risk. I completely agree. The reason why you saw the Ministry of Health, for instance, responding in such a strong fashion to Ebola is that at the time, the Ebola mortality rate was approaching 90%. So at that, 60%. It was quite high. This is less than 3%. So yes, I agree with you. However, it would be nice to see those light measures.
Yes.
It would be nice for us to
reassure.
Dr. Are you telling us calm down, guys? You're panicking for no. You're telling us to calm down.
I'm saying that exactly.
In the face of this coronavirus.
Yes. I'm not saying we drop our guard. What I'm saying is the panic, the fear mongering that is surrounding this coronavirus has drove many of us crazy. Yes. So what we need to do more is get more information. Somehow we need to find a way to do it. If the government is not willing to share it, I gave you alternatives. There are people with information that can share it. I mean, I don't work for government. I would like to believe I have some information like this to share.
And you can point
us and before Mwinzi jumps in, if you spray somebody who is infected with coronavirus, the virus is in his cells. It won't Yes. And secondly, the biggest fear actually for this virus is economic and social impact. You can imagine some guy had gone for a holiday in Wuhan, and they probably had exams somewhere in the US. They can't go to do those exams. Maybe those who are quite important, they've missed income. So that is the biggest impact that this virus is going to have. In terms of health, we have bigger problems that I don't know why you guys are not concerned about as well, that are killing more people.
No, but you can be concerned about more than one thing at a time.
It's something that shows that if it actually were to come to Kenya, it could go out of control.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. And I say this because what we've seen outside China is if there are new cases outside China, but there are not many. There's not a lot of transmission outside China from man to man. So that's, as I say, the risk with this virus is not fully understood, but it's not as high as we want to believe. So that's,
calm down. That's what we're being told.
I want to draw your attention to something almost magical that has happened. In the middle of all this conversation and all this madness about coronavirus and all that, we have a technical expert here who's telling us, guys, assess the risk first. Now, we do not have the capacity to do that. But you notice that when he starts talking and he says, before you go and start fear-mongering and all this, assess the risk. Now, when you have a technical expert giving you information and guiding you and telling you, this is the way you can do this story, but most importantly, ensure that you do not go overboard in reporting this story. That sort of tends to calm the temperatures and the nerves and all that, and so you are able to approach this story from an informed perspective. Now, what has been lacking in this conversation about coronavirus is what Daktari has brought to this table.
Exactly.
The expert perspective on it, as opposed to we journalists, jacks of all trades and masters of none.
We're not scientists, we're not virologists.
Exactly, exactly. But I think it's quite important, and I'm sure the viewer at home is looking at this and saying, there's something that we didn't understand there. Because for me, if I were to go to the government and ask them, could you please tell me what is the risk level? What is the risk level? Are we at risk? On a scale of 0 to 9 or 1 to 10, where are we? Then you'll be able to inform Kenyans and tell them, this thing is happening, but guys, relax. It's not as bad as we think.
Right.
So what clearly comes out is that when we have technical experts talking us, when we have the scientists the researchers talking to us, then it opens up this new world of information where we are able to send out, you know, nuanced reports of everything that is happening, as opposed to us, you know, retreating to our newsrooms, typing away, panicking, calling the government names and doing all that.
And you know, and you know, Dr. you said something earlier that when in 2014, during the thick of the Ebola crisis, and Kenyans elsewhere being stigmatized, and we're seeing the same thing happening to Chinese citizens who have been nowhere near China.
Yes.
They live elsewhere. They're French-speaking Chinese, French people of Chinese extraction who are being stigmatized. And why do you think that is? Ignorance. And why does ignorance exist? Because of lack of information.
And on that,
Yes.
and on that, which you'd say we have done.
But information.
Can we take blame for the fear mongering?
From the discussions I've seen today, you are at a very high level of suspicion. And easy to condemn. So that's part of the fear.
Yes, and to that issue about the rumors and misinformation, there's Shiro, what you do on actually a weekly basis is you fact check and you try to find the facts from all the murk that is out there.
Yes.
And in fact, for the episode that's meant to be airing as soon as we end this show, that is BBC Africa's Fact Finder, this is a snippet of what you can expect. Let's just play that.
Conspiracy theorists and anti-vaccination campaigners have been spreading misinformation online about the origin of the deadly coronavirus that has hit China and recently spread to several countries around the world. One major claim is that the virus, which causes severe lung disease, is not new, but a known strain of the virus that is not being spread deliberately. Twitter users shared links to a patent filed in England in 2015 that talks about developing a weakened version of coronavirus for potential use as a vaccine. The users went on to suggest that the current outbreak has somehow been deliberately planned and manufactured to attract funding for the development of a vaccine. In fact, these conspiracies are based on patents relating to existing strains that are part of the wider coronavirus family, but have nothing to do with the strain currently spreading in China. The fact-checking website Snopes said that this patent is in fact for the avian infectious bronchitis, a previous virus of the coronavirus family that infects poultry. Now, according to social media monitor CrowdTangle, the same link to patent documentation that was shared has appeared in over 260 posts on Facebook, mainly in anti-vaccination and conspiracy groups. Similarly, another patent that has been shared on social media as alleged proof that the coronavirus currently spreading is old, in fact concerns SARS, a member of the wider coronavirus family. SARS killed 774 of the 8,098 people infected in an outbreak that started in China in 2002. Fact-checkers from Snopes say that the apparent confusion with the patents stems from the use of the simple word coronavirus on its own when describing the current outbreak. Coronavirus is a name for a broad family of viruses, including the particular strain currently known as 2019 nCoV that has caused the latest outbreak and has not been seen previously in humans.
And that's courtesy of the BBC. And
I have a stamp of approval.
But what are some of the misconceptions that you've seen out there about this coronavirus that you can charge the media to go out and bust?
Yes, I think that would be the perfect role that you guys can play in, because this information is out there, we cannot ignore it. There are some ridiculous things that are laughable, but if you ignore it and laugh at them, they will continue to misinform. And we've seen people talking about lab-designed virus meant to control the population in China. The same thing we've been hearing about HIV for a long time. We've seen patent or business-driven claims of motive, that people had drugs to sell or vaccines to sell. We've seen interventions, very crude interventions proposed, like shooting gas chambers and things like that. I mean, it's almost ridiculous, but you cannot ignore it. So those are the things we need to actually now counter and say, this is what China is doing as an intervention. These are the available safe vaccines, and recognize that all of us here have probably been infected with the coronavirus, because coronaviruses are the second most common cause of common colds. You have almost definitely been infected with one. But coronavirus infects so many other hosts. Bats, camels, cattle, bats, rodents, everything. And these are animals that we are interacting with closely. In fact, now in Nairobi and everywhere we have bats living with us.
Yes.
Camels, interestingly, are now the most rapidly expanding, what is it called, animal being kept in our part of the Horn of Africa. Why? Maybe climate change. We have dryness, and people are now having camels as far down south as Voi. So because of this,
does that mean we're likely to have more zoonotic
yes.
diseases?
So this means we need to have this One Health approach, which means we look at the environment, we look at the animals we are living with, or the animals we interact with, the animals in the wild, and look at humans. We cannot just look at human health alone. And that means we put more funding. Unfortunately, we've had very little funding from the government on research. We have an improvement over the last 2-3 years, but it needs to be much more so that we can do surveillance. If China did not have ongoing surveillance, they would not have detected this virus within the 2 weeks. As I've given you an example of a 3-month delay. So there are many myths to bust, and you can only bust them if you counter them with information. Don't believe them, don't spread them.
Shira, then
Yes. One thing that we've noticed when we are researching this story is that there's honest misinformation where people innocently share things, and I'm talking to the people who sent as received on WhatsApp. The biggest culprits are spreading misinformation, and not just on coronavirus. I've seen all kinds of frankly harmful things being touted as medical remedies for various conditions. And then there's a more sinister side to it. For instance, the 1980s, there were claims that because it was in the thick of the Cold War, that there were Soviet actors, bad faith actors, that were spreading disinformation that HIV was a lab-created thing to wipe out the African population. And even now we are seeing various forms of disinformation designed to deliberately mislead and cause fear. And we have to be really careful as journalists. For instance, when we look at like what I said in my piece, which we'll see more of after the Fact Finder. I have to do a shameless plug. Fact Finder on the BBC coming right after Press Pass.
As soon as we're done.
As soon as we're done. So one of the things that people have done, and I think it's mostly innocently, is talk about the current outbreak as coronavirus. And because of that, people have gone digging because, there's panic. And of course, when people are panicked, the one thing they want to do is try and scramble for whatever kind of information they can. People went digging and they found existing patents of coronavirus and I think it would have been really important for we as the media to point out that it's a large family. It's like if you look at the bacteria Staphylococcus, they're all different kinds of Staphylococcus. So if I say there's a Staphylococcus outbreak and people say, oh my God, you're going to die, and not knowing that you probably had a staph infection if you've ever had a boil, so those are things that I feel that you could have done more of. And when the doctor says that there's been an element of fear mongering, I feel that we do stand accused because Mark, I have to call you a bit. You called it a catastrophic outbreak at the beginning of the show.
Yes.
It's far from a catastrophe. It is a matter of concern. The WHO has actually said, listen, this is something we need to watch. However, it's really, even things like language, the language we use to report about these things. I mean, it is an epidemic. It's an epidemic, but it's far from being a pandemic. So these are things, the words that we use, even the tone that we use to report, that is really important in kind of diffusing the sort of fear and panic that we're seeing. And then even now, in diffusing the fear and panic will also reduce the amount of ignorance we are seeing. Actual attacks on people of Chinese extraction. We saw someone at the beginning of the show saying, "Wako hapa kujenga barabara." They're here. They are not there. They're here. So
Eunice, real quick.
I agree with Daktari. There's been a lot of fear mongering, especially from a section of the main media. And it has also. I remember the first day when we were reporting this story. Actually, I think I was off social media for a while. So I was called, like, there's this story. And in fact, I hear there are people in Kiambu. There's some 2 Chinese in Kiambu. And I was so disappointed. I saw some major media houses that ran with the story. And it was already like 3 suspected cases. You know, we have 2 Chinese people and from there. And I think from that moment, the fear-mongering caused a lot of xenophobic issues. And recently, we even had a story on Naivasha. Yes. People, you know, there was some panic and a Chinese coughed in a restaurant. And it's because of the fear-mongering that we've been spreading. Mostly, I tend to agree that we've played a part in terms of, you know, spreading the fear, but we still go back to the information. Yes. If I'm not informed as a journalist, I'll not be informed enough to inform the people. So, like what Mwinzi also said, when we have you here, at least I'm also relaxed and I'm like, wow. So I don't need to say that. I need to get, you know, that tough information and get the people in. Yeah. So at least you've talked to us and we're getting that information. That is what we want. We want an expert to give us the opinion, to talk to us and let us assess the risk. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And just real quick, we responded to this as we ended the program, that is, and there's been an appeal by the students, and we have actually been in correspondence with them, who are in Wuhan city, and they, at the point on the 7th of February, actually, they sent this out and appealed to the government to evacuate them from Wuhan, and the government said no, you're actually probably better off there. Actually, they are better off there, and that's what they said. And this is what they had to put out as an appeal. Let's listen.
I am among the 88 Kenyan citizens currently in Wuhan city, pleading with our government to take action and evacuate us.
Mimi ni Mkenya na nalipa ushuru. Niko katika mji wa Wuhan. Naomba serikali niweze kukuwa evacuated. Asante.
I'm one of the Kenyan students who are stuck in Wuhan, and we are requesting for the government to evacuate us.
Coronavirus is my enemy. I'm pleading with my government to consider our safety.
I am a Kenyan, and I plead with the Kenyan government to evacuate me from Wuhan.
I'm pleading with the government to make a swift movement in evacuating us from Wuhan city. The situation is becoming unbearable to all of us.
I'm also a Kenyan student stuck in Wuhan. We are asking for the government to evacuate us.
I am one of the Kenyan students living in Wuhan, pleading with the government to come and evacuate us.
Some of us have medical conditions that need frequent medical attention, but because of the outbreak, we are stranded and cannot find a way out.
My point to the Kenyan government is that this is when we really need them to help us get out of here, because the more we stay here, the more we get exposed to the risks of probably contracting.
And it is understandable that they would want to come back home with what is being faced there. The government responded and said by this piece from Anne Njanja on the Daily Nation, Kenya says won't evacuate students from China, and the reason that was given by Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Macharia Kamau, they are safe where they are. Medically, professionally speaking, yes. What's your response to this?
First, I can see the pain in these guys' faces.
Yes.
What I would like to understand is what is causing so much to make them so distraught. And I think that's information you guys can give us. Talk to these guys one-on-one. Ask them. I saw a video on Wuhan a few days ago, and the city is empty. I mean, it's like Nairobi on Christmas. Even worse, very few cars. So that could cause, I mean, some levels of disturbance. But I would be more concerned about their humanitarian needs. Are you able to find food? Are you able to find medication? And that's something that even the ambassador in Beijing can take care of, assuming that our ambassador is in Beijing. They can take care of. Now, if today I told you I had measles and all of you are exposed and you're not immune, would you want to rush home?
No.
I mean, you're going to expose the people there. So the question is, if this guy is not exposed where he is and he's in the house, that is probably the safest place to be. By leaving, there's a lot of travel that would expose him to begin with. And if he's actually infected and comes to the country where all of us are what we call susceptible, none of us is immune, then that doesn't really help him or help the country. So I would say the biggest problem or the biggest need that they have now is humanitarian. that can be taken care of. We shouldn't ignore them, but I think the government has a point that shipping them back here is not the best way.
Is that
forward.
a point to say that we are not, we don't have the capacity to contain this if it were,
Now,
if we brought them here?
Every public health system has a limitation.
Yes.
As it is now, our systems have improved because they've been tested every now and then. If we had a case or two, or a few cases, I'm sure we'd be able to handle them. We can follow up, we can track. But of course, if you are somehow, there's a huge number of cases. Each system has a limitation. I'm not saying that bringing 88 Kenyans is something we cannot handle. It's probably something we can. The question is, what again the risk of bringing them here, and what is the benefit? For me, I would say we can take care of them in Wuhan by ensuring that they get what they need. And if you self-isolate, you're not going to school, you're not going to work, what is there to fear? You're in your house. It is depressing, but it will save your life. It will save you from
You've interacted with
Yes.
them one-on-one.
I've interacted with a number of the students one-on-one. Actually, some of them are my friends. We chat. When you talk to them, they have this feeling of need. They want a friend.
Yes.
They want somebody to talk to. They are scared. Because as much as Wuhan is under lockdown, people are still getting infected. So their fear is, yes, I'm here, but still people are still getting infected. Another thing, they are complaining about some of the food rations that they have. They're running short of them. Like now they have to depend on few bags of rice that are remaining. And then the other fear that some of them expressed was, for instance, now most of the universities, about 6 universities in Wuhan, they closed the universities, the students are at home. The Chinese students, yes. But now most of them, now they have to, self-isolate in their dormitories. But now, when they watch the news, when they read the news, when they get this information from social media, like recently I was sharing with one of them, was saying, do you know they're now turning the dormitories to makeshift, wards for sick people. So what if they run out of this space? Are they going to come for us? So you see, there's paranoia in that, and they just feel like we really want to come home, and they feel, I don't know, but whatever you've explained is also what the PS, Foreign Affairs, explained and said. Actually, the reason why some countries have not evacuated their citizens from Wuhan is the fear of spreading the country. But I think these students need to be listened to. Yes. They really need to be listened to. They might have a point. They might even have an idea of how they think they can be kept safe. But telling them that the Chinese government has assured us that you're going to be safe doesn't really help.
As reassuring.
Yes.
I would say,
not reassuring.
Yeah, I would say our ambassador should be in touch with each of these children.
Yeah.
If each of these students, that would be, because they need more psychosocial support than any other thing. And is this my last shot?
Keep going.
I would like to say it is clear that, these people are isolated, so they may not know what is happening to their dormitories or the other things, unless that's where they're staying.
They get information.
So that paranoia and that, there's a lot of, I can start easily a rumor here that if I watch news here, you'll get coronavirus through the airwaves, and it will trend. I hope that somebody has not picked it as, yes, and in fact, it's doctor. Yes. So, and you keep saying about information. It's good you went out of your way to collect that information. Yeah. I would also like to highlight that as you seek this information, government is not a single source. We agreed here that it's no longer the mainstream media that shares information. There are many sources. There are many reliable sources of information. Create a relationship with them, whether it's your Google, create a relationship with scientists. At Kavi Institute of Clinical Research, where I work, we have regular journal club meetings, and we invite people to come in. Yeah. Come interact with scientists. See how we interpret our findings, see how we communicate them.
Yes.
Take it up from there and take it to the public. It's very easy to get this information out if you're looking for it. It's difficult to find it, but for you guys it's easy to communicate it, as it's much easier than for us than it is for us.
Yeah. Because and this is what I said at the beginning of the show, that we cannot expect the government to be the be an end-all gatekeeper of information, because you will be disappointed. And there are very many other sources of information that are credible, that are up to date. So if we go that route, it will be a lot easier for even the government to step up, because we are a step ahead of them. So it will actually, I think, put a fire in their belly, because they do not also want to be rendered redundant.
Yes.
Thank you. That was a very hard sentence for me to say.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And as you respond, this Eddie Moss tweeted, Mark, we are stuck in Wuhan and situation is becoming much worse. Our government has forsaken the students here. How about your station do a diligent report on the true situation here? Many governments have come for their citizens, but only African countries have told us deuces. What's our duty here?
It's interesting that you're bringing this up now. I think about a week ago, we talked to one of the students there and actually asked him to write for the Daily Nation. And he brought issues about all these other countries evacuating their students and saying, why are we stuck here? Are you talking to the government? Are you talking to the ministry? There is a sense of panic there. But I also understand the government. It's caught between a rock and a hard place. Do you ignore these people and be accused of ignoring them, or do you bring them here and run the risk of infecting the local population? Now, today during the meeting with the Chinese ambassador, we asked that question: what is happening to the Kenyan students in Wuhan? And he said the Chinese embassy here is in constant contact with them. Now, I don't know whether that is true, but he said we are in constant communication with them. We are addressing their needs. We are, supplying them with food and medical aid and whatever they need. I agree. I don't think it's right now to bring them home. I think it's a bit too late. And in any case, Wuhan is under lockdown. No one can go in, no one can leave. So you have to understand this from that perspective. I think the most important thing now is for the government to take care of the situation as it is now. Take care of its people where they are, ensure that they do not lack anything. There's something else I also want to say. I don't want to get to a point where I do not listen to the government. I also don't want to get to a point where I do not trust it or I ignore it, because I am the link between the government and the population. I must have constant communication and linkages with the government and its actors. It's important that we have that going. And for me to do that, and for the public to keep trusting what I'm giving it, it means that the information that the government is giving me and the information that I'm passing on to the public is true and accurate. That is very, very important, and the government cannot run away from that responsibility. Neither can we as journalists.
About the tweets you just read, these students have been trying as much as they can to tell their stories. Initially, they were even open and they could even share with us. And I remember we used to joke that they are our correspondents in Wuhan. Then all of a sudden, they stopped. So we, as much as we've tried to tell their stories and we really tried to highlight the situation there, so most of them were citing, a fear of victimization, of losing their scholarships. So they shied away from the media. Like, we were supposed to have an interview with one today, but they went AWOL. So I don't know how we can really tell the story per se from there, because we are in Nairobi, the government is in Nairobi, will tell us they've been taken care of. So as Dr. has suggested, it would be better if the ambassador, the Kenyan ambassador to China, could have a one-on-one with these students and get to understand and tell us the story from where they are. Are they really safe? Are they okay? Are they running out of supplies? Are they running out of humanitarian services? But I don't know. There's a link that is slowly fading away between the journalist and getting the story from Wuhan.
All right.
I think there's one thing that bears fact-checking, and I think that's the facts that we need to approach, even as this is a very emotive situation, but we really have to approach certain things with a cool head. For instance, they say other countries have all evacuated their students. That needs to be fact-checked.
You're indoors.
Yeah, that absolutely needs
communication,
to be
of course. But
it's when you're stuck. I have never been in a situation. I'm in the middle of an active epidemic in a locked down city, so I cannot tell them how to react or how to feel. But statements like these need to be fact-checked. It's so important, so that even people looking at this situation from the outside don't feel like, wow, the Kenyan government is really dropping the ball.
And we're not in the business of just attacking the government.
Exactly.
And as you mentioned earlier, when they said that they have the capacity to test for new coronavirus, from your perspective, this is the case.
I have no doubt I have no reason to doubt them. From my inquiries, I think they do. And I think that's true because, as I said, it took some time to set it up, but I think now we are ready to go. And it's, as a government, I don't see why they would say they have the capacity and they don't. Because they are not working in a military camp. They're working with other Kenyans. I mean, people like me, people like you, who would easily leak this information to you and tell you this is a lie. So I think there is ability now to test.
Okay.
There's also ability to treat these people because it's mostly supportive. So the only thing, as I said, is our limitations is with numbers. Like any system in the world, if you're overwhelmed by numbers, of course you would crumble. But as it is now, I think if you had 2, 3, 4 cases coming in, I'm not saying they should, it should be able to handle it because there is a better system now than it was before because of the current, the recent threats of yellow fever, Ebola, cholera, and what have you.
But Kazi Kwetu wanasema influenza is something bigger that we should actually be focusing on.
I mean, there've been massive outbreaks. In the early 20th century, it killed how many million people? 50 million people.
Twice
Yeah.
the number who died from World War I.
Yes.
So to see panic.
No.
All right.
As Daktari says, we calm down.
Calm down.
All right, and on that note, I'd like to thank you all for your time. And ladies, enjoy Valentine's Wanaume Tukutane Men's Conference. We will be there. We all know where it is, and we won't say it on national television because we have a bro code. But yes, thank you so much